Here we are at the creation of mankind. Genesis 2:4-9. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. Now no shrub had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant had yet sprung up, for Yahweh Elohim had not yet sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground. But a mist came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. Then Yahweh Elohim formed a man from the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. Now Yahweh Elohim had planted a garden in the east, in Eden, and there he put the man he had formed. Yahweh Elohim made all kinds of trees to grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. The tree of life was in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So in day 6, the creation of land-dwelling animals and humans was contained, and the garden in the Eden that had been planted by Elohim could have been planted on day 3 when the first plants appeared, because it says it had been planted. But no other plants had yet sprung up upon the earth until there was a man to work them. Day 6 of creation has much to unpack in its literal, allegorical, and prophetic themes. So in Hebrew, the word for ground is Adamah, and Adam is made from the dust of the Adamah. Adam has the meanings of mankind, ruddy, red, and red dyed. Essentially, Adam is a man made of clay from the ground. We somewhat know this to be true because soil, like true dirt soil, is a microenvironment, final place of where things return to dust. So we know that Adam is made from the dust of the Adamah, and it's also where dust returns, and it's a microbiome, and the human body is also a microbiome. We have flesh and blood and all of that, but also within our skin, there's tiny little microbes, and I don't like calling them germs because that just gives them a negative connotation, but we are a microbiome. There are teeny tiny microorganisms living within us that communicate, that can determine whether or not we're healthy or strong or unhealthy. And that's the same for soil. So we can be compared to soil very heavily. Even if our food is not coming from healthy soil, we become unhealthy. So we are very tied into soil. And it is not a mere coincidence that the skin tones of mankind match the colorations of the clay from the earth. So if you compare skin tones of humans to all the different varying colorations of clay from the earth, they match up, as you can see in these pictures. The creation of mankind. So Adamah in Hebrew is ground. And from right to left, it is Aleph, strength, Dalet, path, Mem, water or springs, and Hey, behold. So we could come up with the pictographic definition of the strength of the path, that water or springs it can behold. And this makes sense because the ground does have the strength to behold the path of waters. And this is most likely the main purpose of land. Like, land could have been created mainly for the purpose of holding waters. The very original thing that was here and that the earth was created out of was water. So then land would have to be made, secondly, to contain and hold the waters underneath of the firmament. There's paths for the waters to behold. So that's a really cool definition for the word ground. It also does mean that the ground is strong because it even starts with the Aleph. So, I mean, the ground has to be strong in its making to be able to contain everything that does and hold waters, because waters are strong and waters can carve paths and stuff like you've seen with canyons and whatnot. It's a very cool definition for the word ground. And here we are with Adam, and his name comes from the word ground. And his name alone is from right to left in Hebrew is Aleph, strength, Dalet, path, Mem, waters or springs. So his name is more simply the strength of the path of water. We are vessels of clay and we hold waters or life in us. So the Hebrew word picture for Adam gives the idea that man is a vessel of clay and water, just like a clay pot. Very neat. The breath of life. Yahweh breathed the breath of life into Adam's nostrils. His breath is the Holy Spirit, or the Ruach HaKodesh, and he breathes that. And it belongs to him only, to him alone. When he breathes it, that word is the neshama. And neshama means life and spirit. This is such a beautiful word, and the word neshama broken down into its pictographic form, into its pictographic language. So neshama, meaning spirit or breath, from right to left is seed from the noon, shin is breakdown or teeth, mem is water, and hay is breath. This is a word that means the seed that needs broken down in water to allow breath. So Yahweh's own breath is a seed that needs broken down in waters. Adam is a vessel of waters, and the seed needs broken down in it. The seed needs broken down or consumed, like how soil can break down materials like I just mentioned, and then we need water too. And then when the seed gets broken down in waters, there is a beholdence or a breath that takes place. Breath as a spirit is being compared to a seed that needs to be allowed to grow. Life is che in Hebrew, which means living. So, in other words, Yahweh breathed the spirit of living into Adam to animate Adam into a living soul or a living being, and wants the seed of his spirit to grow in Adam, because the neshama works within Adam. And the Hebrew word for being or soul is nefesh. Nefesh is living soul or being. Nefesh, right to left, nun, which is seed, pe, which is word or speak, and shin, which is break down or consumed. So the living soul or a living being, its definition is the seed of the word, or to speak, broken down. You see how these work together? So here we have Yahweh's breath of life, or Yahweh's neshama, is the seed that needs to be broken down in waters, and in a living soul, which is the vessel of waters where the seed of the word is broken down. Yahweh has his neshama, and that's the seed that needs broken down. The living soul of a human is the place where the seed gets broken down, so that it can speak its word. That word behaves as a seed containing instructions. This once again directs our attention back to the significance of the womb model. How Yahweh always likes to work as an instruction giver, and he fertilizes and he gives instruction. He gives his perfect Torah, and we are a vessel for that, and the earth is a vessel for that. And the waters act as a womb for it. When we don't work as a womb, and when we don't receive his word, that is when destruction and chaos and curse comes. Now we have the garden enclosure. Noah had planted the Garden of Eden for Adam, and Eden in Hebrew is Aden. Aden, from right to left in Hebrew, is Ayin, which is eyes or experience, Dalet, path, and Nun is life or seed. So we can say the Garden of Eden was the experience leading to the path of life. Something needed to be experienced there, as we could all know, would lead to the path of life. The Garden of Eden can be said to have been the experience to the path of life, and Adam is to work in the garden and keep it. In the midst of the garden was the tree of life, as well as the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Here, we again come across something being placed in the midst. The firmament was something that was placed in the midst. It was said to have been placed in the midst. And now we have the two trees being placed in the midst. Here we read Genesis 2:15. Then Yahweh Elohim took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and keep it. The Hebrew word for took, used in verse 15, is lakak, and it means to take in marriage. Also, in verse 15, the word for placed is nuach, which means to rest, lay down, and settle. Another way to put it is that Yahweh made a place to be in covenant with Adam and have Adam rest. And we know Yahweh is an Elohim of covenant, a marriage covenant, and that he really emphasizes giving his people rest in covenant. And that is something he's doing with Adam here in the Garden of Eden. And now recall how Adam was made of clay. So how does a potter make a clay pot? A potter must use clay and water, right? So in order to make a clay pot, you have to have water and you have to have clay. And then you have to allow the clay pot to rest in a cool air to set properly. Cool air is mentioned in the Garden of Eden, and it's mentioned that Adam is taken in marriage, or has a word that means to be taken in marriage mentioned for him, and he's there to rest. So we have a just created clay pot that needs to set properly. Visit Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, and rephrase it. It can go like this. Then Yahweh Elohim formed Adam from the dry ground and blew into his face his name, his character, and his living waters, and Adam became a living soul. So that's just adding definitions into Genesis 2:7. So when Adam, as a living soul, was placed in the garden here is the Hebrew word gan, which means an enclosure. So here we once again are getting that dome or enclosure idea, like the firmament. And Adam was to cultivate it and keep it, or to serve and protect it. Keep this in mind. If a place as perfect as Eden had to be enclosed, served, and protected, what was outside of it, or even what was in it? What needed to be enclosed, served, and protected, and worked? What was so special? So here's some pictures of how you make a clay pot, and the breathing of the breath of life, and here's soil, and here's water, and how the two have to go together to make clay. And then here's like an image I found of like a type of firmament with a type of a tree of life. Pretty neat fantasy-like picture of how it could be depicted. The Garden of Eden, there's rivers, there's greenery, there's the tree of life in the middle, something else is winding around it, and what needs protected in there, you know? It's a very special place.